Yeah, all right, what's going on out there in You Can Learn Guitar Land? So today, oh, by the way, click the links below for some awesome stuff before I forget. Today is not going to be so much a playing lesson. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about guitar setups. Super important. It makes all the difference in the world. Especially if you're a beginner and you're like, I can't play this thing, my fingers are bleeding, right? So there's a lot of different things you can do, a lot of different things you can talk about, a lot of different kind of guitars. Those of you who are going from acoustic to electric, lots of things to think about. You know, what kind of player you want to be, blah, 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 blah. So let's zoom in and I'll go over a couple things maybe to think about. And that will help you, A, to maybe get a better setup on the guitar, and B, maybe kind of pick something that kind of suits the style of music and stuff that you want to do. I also did another video a while back, how to pick a guitar. It's going to be a little bit different. We're going to go over, you know, some more minute details. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this guitar. This is my Nash. It's a Bill Nash. He's a, you know, kind of custom relic builder guy out of, I think, Washington. Love his guitars. Everyone I've ever played has just been killer. I did my own little route job here with the humbucking pickup. I'm a huge Lollar, which comes in the Nashes, these single coil pickups, right? Huge fan of Lollar pickups. Anybody that can't quite afford a new guitar, like say, you know, $500-600 to take the leap to get a new and better guitar, for a little bit less than that, maybe, you know, depending on how many pickups you want to get, for maybe $300 or $100 a pickup, or depending, there's lots of good pickup makers. I'm just completely sold on Lollars. Or Lollar, however you pronounce his name. Epic for Hendrix, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. So they're the S series, right? Those are single coil. For all you who don't know, these are single coils, right? And what's in the back here is called a humbucker. Now what's cool about the humbucker is single coils can be noisy. You know, that kind of you know, noise you hear when you plug in your guitar and you're like, what is that sound? And as soon as you roll off your volume knob, it goes away, right? Well, single coils are hum inducing, right? Now they have stacked single coils. Another pickup I really, really like, right, is called a Dimarzio Hs3. And for those of you guys who like Yngwie out there, it was what he originally had, right, before he had the YJM pickup or whatever it is. I'm also a huge fan of Dimarzio. Seymour Duncans are great too. This is just personal preference, right? Apples and oranges. I like the Dimarzio Hs3s. They're a little cheaper than the Lollars. They're stacked, although I did not have mine set up as stacked. And what stacked means is like a humbucker that fits in a single coil spot, right? So they're kind of hum canceling. So you don't get that super hum, right? This, a lot of you always ask me what this humbucker is. This is a Dimarzio Tone Zone. Really, really, really love this pickup. I haven't messed with the Lollar humbuckers. I hear they're amazing. I have some producer buddy friends of mine who have just all sorts of just wicked vintage guitars, and they went through and replaced all of their humbuckings and single coils with Lollars. So this isn't like a Lollar, you know, buy Lollar pickup special, but they just really are amazing, right? So also, if you want cheaper pickups, not cheaper sound-wise, right? Seymour Duncan, Dimarzio, all sorts of pickup makers out there make fantastic pickups, right? They have really good websites, descriptions on, you know, what to look for, blah, 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 right? So that's single coil. This is a humbucker back here. Again, that's a Dimarzio. The cool thing about the Dimarzio, or humbuckers for that matter, this particular one I like, is kind of, I'm a huge Van Halen fan, right? So this is kind of like PAF, like the old one he used to have in his guitar, with a little more output. Real good string definition, right? From string to string. That means when you do that kind of a deal, you can really hear each string. Now it's a little bit higher of an output pickup, but it doesn't sound that way, right? Another thing when you're, getting a guitar is the height of the pickups, right? Away from the strings. The height, how close you have the pickup to the string, right? It gets hotter of a sound. You'll bring out the treble, you'll bring out the bass. There's independent screws, if you notice here and here, will adjust the height of your pickup. Now, a word of caution, as you get closer, since this is a magnet, it starts to interfere if you get too close with when the string is hit. It naturally has a kind of a, I don't know, like a circle pattern to it, right? And the closer you get, it'll throw that out. So your guitar will start to sound out of tune if you get too close. So you can always mess around. I keep mine a little bit on the lower side, right? I want to hear the guitar as well. I don't want to hear it be all pickup. So I'm kind of right in the middle. I float between both worlds. So again, single coil up here, humbucker back here. Now there's another pickup which is one of my favorite pickups of all time, and it's called a P90. And a P90, for those of you who know Gibsons, are these guys. Now this is a best of both worlds pickup, right? It's kind of in between a single coil and a humbucker, although they do have some noise, right? So definitely if you're playing stages where the soundman's like, you gotta be quiet, you might get into trouble with these pickups, although there are pickup guys who are making them that are much quieter these days, right? So it's that kind of in between humbucker and single coil, really good stringy, but really ripping overdrive. I mean, I can't stress enough, if you've never played a guitar with a P90, go at least try one. These Gibson SGs, they have Juniors, they have Les Pauls that have P90s in them. I think they also have 335s, although they may be called something different with P90s. But very, very, very cool pickup sound, right? Another thing to think about, all you guys who are, aspiring to be, in bands and record and stuff like that, you want to be able to represent every kind of tone. You want to have a P90, you want to have a guitar with humbuckers, you want to have a guitar with single coils. That's, if you're ever going to be a session guy, it's mandatory, right? You got to have a guitar that, different kinds of guitars, Strat, Tele, SG, Les Paul, some sort of hollow body 335, which they're fantastic. And if you guys can get over how they look, they sound amazing, right? So those are really awesome as well. So P90s. Now, since we have this is a different kind of a bridge, right? Strats oftentimes will have tremolo, right? The little bar. So it has springs and blah, blah, blah. This is like attached straight to the body, no springs. It's just, right there, as on Les Pauls, most SGs, Juniors, right? It just comes right out of this thing into the, the tuners up here, right? So that is also a kind of sound. Some people think that it has a better vibration throughout the body. It's just one of those things. It's personal preference. One of the things that is different about Gibsons that you can think about is the fretboard radius, which means the curve. All guitars have a curve to the fretboard, right? So the Gibson fretboard radius is flatter. Now, sometimes that isn't as conducive to playing chords, but it's really cool for playing leads. Also, Gibsons, 9 times out of 10, or a lot of times, are made out of mahogany, which is a very cool sounding wood, right? It's I don't know how to describe it without using wood, right? Whatever, as a term, but it kind of has that sound. You hear more of the wood, I guess you would say, right? So I'm sure there'll be plenty of comments on that. But anyways, so it's a flatter fretboard radius. Something to think about. It makes lead playing a little bit easier, although, I mean, obviously there's Hendrix and all those guys who are burning guitar players that play on a rounder, fretboard radius. Something to think about when you feel it. Just go and play one, go to your local music shop or guitar center or whatever and just mess around with, like, oh, okay, this one does feel, it's a shorter scale length, right? You know, this whole thing's a little bit shorter on a Gibson. Gibsons, I find, are a little bit, you know, you use a little bit lighter touch too, right? If you're used to wailing on a Strat, when you go over to a Gibson, it's a different feel, right? You'll be like, God, I'm out of tune. Lighten up your touch, you know, develop a little bit of more dynamics in your playing. Maybe lighten up how you pick, loosen up your picking hand. You know, try all these different things. Each guitar, each type of guitar, Strat, Tele, SG, Gibson, all going to feel different, all going to need to be played a little bit different. So spend some time with that. So then we have my other favorite guitar in the whole wide world, and it is another Bill Nash guitar. It's a Tele. Now Teles, to me, sound a little bit hotter, like a little bit more ring to them, a little bit throatier than a Strat, which I really love. Now there's not as many pickup, you know, options, right? You basically just have back here, up here, or a combination of the two on a Tele, unless you have one of those fancy Brent Mason Strats with another pickup, right? The Nashville Tele. They're just awesome. They really have a sound. I mean, and it doesn't have to be associated with country. A lot of great rock albums, like the first, I think, couple Led Zeppelin albums for that matter, were done on a Telecaster, right? And then he switched to a Les Paul. Really awesome sound with distortion, amazing sound with clean. I highly, highly recommend you play a Tele, right? Even if you're a metal guy or whatever. Like I was saying before, different tones. You know, you get into recording, it's a totally different voice that you're going to hear with a Telecaster. So they also don't have any springs coming, you know, on the back side of the body, right? It's just right through the string hole. So that, you know, to some people does something with the tone, right? So listen for yourself, see what you think. This is also Lollar pickups, amazing, best Tele pickups ever. Okay, so all right, now for some of my favorite stuff. 80s guitars. Yeah. Kramer. Right? So back in the 80s when guitar players were guitar players and shredded all over the place, and you saw a lot of this. Right? It was really nice to have guitars with a flat, again, flat radius, right? So we're not too curved, we're real flat, so we can do all sorts of shredding, get the action super low. A lot of guitars like this, whether they're Jackson, Kramer, Ibanez, have a real thin neck, which is nice. You know, you don't have a big fat chunky neck for when you're trying to do faster runs. Now I actually like the bigger necks now because it seems like they have a little more tone, right? A little more wood, a little more sustain. But these are still great. Not to say that any of those guitars like this, they sound awesome. They just kind of do a different thing, right? So, the bridge is a Floyd Rose, and you can see you cut the ball off and you put them in this thing and you lock it down, and then you fine tune with this, and then here you have a locking nut. And what that allows you to do is just get absolutely crazy with the bar and do all sorts of Van Halen and Rat and Dragon Force and whatever you listen to, metal guys out there. And it's really fun, you know. A lot of the guitars are real simple. This one just has one volume knob, you know, keeping it real basic. I put it comes, I think, with a Seymour Duncan, but I put another tone zone in this one. Love it, man. This is a great guitar. The action, I mean, you can breathe on the thing and it plays ripping arpeggios for you. So it allows it to get super low. I mean, I don't know if you can really see that, but the action is, I mean, it basically looks like it's part of the frets, you know. So that's another thing I suggest, you know, is really taking it to a guy who knows what he's doing, you know. Find the best guitar players in town and ask them who sets up their guitars. You know, a lot of times you can go into a music store and, oh, sure, we can set up guitars or whatever, and not so much, right? So, not that saying music stores don't have good setup guys. A lot of them have great ones. I drive an hour to this place called Wild West Guitars in Riverside, and the guy there is amazing. If you live in California, I mean, I don't care how far you live in California, send the guy your guitar. They're awesome, right? So, but he's able to set it up really to my needs and what I like, you know. I like bigger frets, so he puts bigger frets in all my guitars, and that's another thing, fret height. You know, if you're going to do a lot of bending and you want your action to be low, sometimes it's cool to have a little bit bigger of a frets, whereas if you're more of a chord guy and you're not going to do any bending or jazz or whatever, a lot of times smaller frets are more conducive to that style of music, right? I'll go back to this other guitar here. Another thing you could think about is this is called a nut, right? Let's get it into focus here. That's a nut. Now, it's made out of a lot of different stuff. Some are bone, some are, you know, some composite material or whatever. A lot of my guitars have a bone nut in them. Right? Another one of those. I'm sure they'll get comments on that. But, you know, have a guy, you know, make a nut or oil the nut or whatever, because a lot of times if you have a Strat and stuff like that, it gets hung up. This is where the tuning problems happen. 9 times out of 10, you bend, and then when you release the tension of the string, it gets caught up in the nut, and that's what gets you out of tune. So having one that's cut right, the string slides through. Some guys put, like, you know, graphite in there, like from a pencil or oil or both or whatever, and it keeps it real nice and lubricated, so when you do a lot of bends and stuff like that, your guitar doesn't get out of tune. Another thing you have to think about is intonation, right? So what's intonation? Well, and this works with new strings, right? So what you basically want is you want to be able to hit an open string and have it tune, and you want it to be able to tune the exact same. So if you hit here or here, 12th fret harmonic, it's going to be exactly the same. And what that does is, as you go up and down the neck, right, if it's not properly intonated, as you move up the neck and get into different spots and higher, guitars have a hard enough time as it is staying in tune as you get up higher and higher. If the guitar is not intonated properly, tuning is going to be a nightmare, especially when you start coming up higher. So this whole video is basically on different types of guitars, pickups, what a bridge is, you know, what the nut, you know, tuners are another big thing. Let's get that back into focus. There we go. All different types. Some guys like the locking tuners when they don't want to have, like, the Floyd Rose locking nut up here. They'll get locking tuners, and that can help. A lot of guitars have that on it. You can buy a set for not that expensive. I think they're like, you know, $100 or so. And that'll help keep you in tune as long as the nut's done really good. And you know, just stuff like that. You know, these are all things that you can think about on a lot of my guitars, like my Strat. You'll notice I'm kind of a less is more guy. I took the well, there was a volume knob here, and I moved it down here. I got it out of the way, and this is a tone knob, but I don't even think it's connected. I just like volume knobs. Less is more for me. I mean, it's just one of those guys. But, you know, find out what works for you too. You know, if you're not using this stuff, you know, a lot of guys have a problem with that volume knob when they're playing. They hit it all the time. So, you know, that was happening to me, and it would roll down the volume as you're playing. So I just moved it, you know. You can get pick guards drilled or undrilled and have just the, you know, the 2 knobs down here. It really helped me out. See, so on this guitar, you know, the intonation is different than on the Tele. It's same premise, but each individual string has its own, you know, saddle or whatever, as with the Floyd Rose guitar over there too. So get your guitar set up, or you know, at least think about it. It really helps. And then those are the kind of the boil down of different neck radiuses, bigger or smaller frets. You remember the flatter the fretboard is better for, you know, lead and stuff like that. The rounder it is, it's better for chords. So some guys have compound radius. Some guitars have that. I think the Ibanez's might have that, where it's, as it gets up the neck, it's rounder, flatter. So as you get higher up the neck, the radius flattens out, so you can do lead work. So enough of the babbling. That's just stuff to think about guitar-wise. I know that's a lot, but, you know, I can't stress enough, you know, guitar is so fun, and it's so much more fun when your guitar actually plays well. All of this applies to an acoustic as well. You know, getting an acoustic setup, the saddle or whatever it is down here on an acoustic, you know, you can get that file down so the action's lower. You know, lighter strings, heavier strings, everything matters. So, you know, find a good quality tech and get your guitars checked out, and think about, you know, what kind of player you want to be. Like I said, if you're just a strummer, man, it doesn't matter. Get an old 50s style Strat or something with a nice curve in the neck. As they go up in years, like you get 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, the radius on Strats get flatter and flatter typically. The newer ones are like 9.5, or I think the 50s ones are like 7.5, right? So it's flatter. I like the newer style myself better. So find out what works for you. All right. I hope that helps you guys out a lot. Guitar 101. All right. Catch you next time.